Hey, it's Kirk. It's Kirk again. It's me again. That means this is still Dumb Test Late, and also means this is Kirk still. And we're back. We're still in season 3, but what's changed this time, as I promised from last episode, it's technically spooky season. We are full on in spooky season, as this is the first full week in October, and we gotta churn out those spooky story ideas. This episode is going to be the first one. I'm planning to do at least 4, to do like one each week, even though I looked back at last year, because I started this last year, and technically I did 5 spooky story ideas. I did Where the Mushroom Grows, where I think that was one where it was based on like the Skinwalker Ranch, where something was growing in the earth, where a serial killer was using a farm as like his hunting grounds or something like that. Then I did Homecoming Hell, which was based on like this weird dream I had where the entrance to hell was on the street I grew up on. Then I did the worst title ever. I'm still sorry for this title. It was called Dr. Frank A.I. Stein. I'm sorry for that title, but it was like a digital Frankenstein's monster. I still love that idea. I hate that title. I did one called Resurrection Mary, which is kind of a sweet story to take on the, hitchhiking ghostly apparition that you see at the side of the road, which I will do kind of a different version of this year, but that'll be later on. And I did the last one for spooky season was Reunion Too Late, which was based on me actually going to high school with someone who turned out to be a serial killer, which is still weird to think of. But yeah, I did 5 spooky season ideas, so I have to at least do 5. I might do 7 or 8, hopefully. Yeah. So this first one, okay, before I get to the first rules, these stories aren't going to be like graphic, or I'm not a big on like horror when it's like graphic or grotesque or anything like that, and no jump scares. I know this is an audio format. No jump scares. I won't do any spooky sounds or anything like this. You might hear something like this in the background just for me to set the mood, set the spooky mood like this. But I won't do any jump scares, any boos, or any loud noises, because people listen to this while at work and driving, and I don't want to jump scare you. I'm not a fan of jump scares myself. That's my promise to you. No jump scares on any of this episodes. It's just story creation that are themed to spooky ideas. Okay. So this first one, the original title I had for it was The Loud Witch, but I ended up changing it to The Moonlit Witch, or in Spanish sounds like this.
La novia iluminada por la luna.
For all my Spanish speaking amigos out there. But this one is going to be set in Mexico City. So the background of this is that 2 years ago, I actually went to Mexico on a huge family trip. It was amazing. We stayed in a couple different places, but one of the places we stayed on was in Mexico City. This huge Airbnb. It was amazing. Mexico City is an amazing place to visit. I just wish I knew more Spanish so I could fit in more. But there was one night, this part is the true story that is based off. There's one night where I always have trouble sleeping in different places than, my home bed. Anytime I'm traveling in a hotel and Airbnb, I always struggle. And I was on like the first floor in this living room. There was like this huge couch that I was just going to sleep on. And it was really late at night, and it's in the city, so you have your usual city noises. But at one point where I was kind of falling asleep, I was getting there to that point where you're going to fall asleep any second. And this person who I didn't see them. I only heard their voice. So I'm assuming they're female, or they had a female sounding voice, was just walking up and down the street, just screaming. Which I do know some Spanish curse words. I could pick those out, what they were saying. But they were just, incoherently screaming up and down the street. And that was fun to try to fall asleep to. And it was like, just, if you ever stay in a city or something that you're not from, you have to get used to those crazy city sounds. That was just one of them. the honking, the police sirens and all this stuff, people leaving bars, going to bars and all that stuff, and just a mad person screaming. Sometimes you have to get used to that, especially when you're in a different country and you don't 100% know the language. Somebody's just screaming outside of the window or the door that you're staying at. That's always fun. But that was the original story. And like the next morning, a family member asked what was going on with that person screaming. And I replied, oh, the first thing was, okay, good. I'm not the only one who heard that person screaming. And I replied, oh, I didn't go talk to them. So that was like 2 years ago. I recently started listening to this podcast. I think I mentioned it on the last episode. This podcast called Heart Starts Pounding, which is really good. If you want a podcast about kind of spooky stuff, listen to that. But they did this episode on the legend in Mexico City called the Burning Woman. And there's a street named after it in Spanish, of course. The Burning Woman is the English translation. About this is folklore about this young woman who kind of was from a wealthy family. So she had a lot of suitors. And she was, I can't remember if she was arranged to be married or, back then where, marriage wasn't about love. It was about financial situations and all that stuff. And of course, when you come from a wealthy family, things are arranged and set up like that. So it was kind of that situation. And she was arranged to marry this guy who she wasn't sure that he loved her. She was beautiful. So she had a lot of suitors. She wasn't sure that he loved her for her, just her family's money and her looks. So she kind of did something, like I said earlier, the rules, I'm not going to get into something grotesque, but she did something to basically, with hot coals, to change her appearance, something, use your imagination. She hurt herself in a way with hot coals and fire to brutally change her appearance because she wanted to appear to her suitor in a deformed state to make sure that he still loved her for her, which he did in the story. But that's how the story goes. The street she lived on is named after her. There was no, she came back to life later on and was a ghost and all that stuff. But that's like one of the bases for the story. My story is she's going to come back to life because it's a spooky season. I got to create a ghost story. There's also another story I'm going to take from that is called this in Spanish.
La Pascualita.
It's about this bridal shop or clothing shop. It's in a different part of Mexico. I think it's called Chihuahua, Mexico, where there's this very lifelike looking mannequin in the storefront that's wearing a wedding dress. And the folklore is, or the urban legend, whatever you want to call it, is that was an actual person that died. Like it was the previous shop owner's daughter. I think this is the folklore. The story is set in like the 1930s that she died tragically, and it was so brokenhearted. He embalmed her body and made her this lifelike mannequin that sits in the front of the store wearing a wedding dress, like she died before her wedding that was supposed to happen and all this stuff. You can look up pictures of it. But it's the mannequin looks really creepy because those two stories are the behind of what leads to my story, which is called The Moonlit Bride, or in Spanish, it's called
La novia iluminada por la luna.
Which doesn't really roll off the tongue in Spanish, but The Moonlit Bride. So here's my story. It's going to be kind of based on my real life story of me trying to fall asleep in Mexico City and the woman screaming outside. So, like I said, no jump scares, no weird sounds. I'm just going to use some audio to set the mood. So, my character is sleeping there on a stormy night. He's trying to fall asleep. Oh yeah, quick backstory. This is my character's backstory. He's a visitor to Mexico City. His parents were from Mexico, but of course they immigrated to the U.S. when he was little, and he's coming back here now. He's kind of trying to, keep up with the culture because he's, his parents are afraid he's been Americanized, so they bring him back here. and he's studying to be a chef. So they take him to all these like market squares and all this stuff to get all these organic and original Mexican ingredients because he wants to learn how to, be a chef. So he's trying to get back to his roots. So he's staying in this, kind of this old town in Mexico in this Airbnb by himself, and he's struggling to fall asleep. So, like I said, setting the mood. It's a stormy night. And so he's trying to fall asleep. He's been like trying with these new recipes all day, and he can't really get it because he's far away from his roots. But he's trying to get in touch with, he's struggling with these recipes with these old ingredients and all this stuff. This old recipe books that's, been handed down from generation to generation. He's trying to modernize it to make a new thing. To eventually he wants to open his own restaurant, but he's been struggling with all day. And he's like made a huge mess in the kitchen trying with different things. But like he's laying on the couch trying to sleep, and it's rainy outside. And it's helping him sleep, and he's trying to get in that comfortable state. When you hear that rain and you want to let it hypnotize you to fall asleep. And he's getting to that point where his heart rate is slowing down. His brain is slowing down. His mind is becoming at rest. But then the rain just stops. Sound stops. There's no more street noises outside. There's just nothing. There's just silence. But he doesn't want to open his eyes and investigate. He just wants to fall asleep. But then through all the silence, something cuts into him. A voice. He hears the ghostly voice calling to him. But it's faint, and he can't really hear exactly what it's saying. So in all the silence, he makes the mistake of getting up and going to the window. He slowly opens the window. Then he hears it again. He's hypnotized by that sound, but he doesn't see anything because it's night. It's an old town in Mexico City where they don't have too many street lights, but he feels like he's in a dream state. Now it's just a dream. So he goes to close the window again. Then he hears a sound behind him. He makes the mistake of every horror story. He never opened the door. He never let in the spirit. He just realized that noise behind him was the door to his Airbnb, his little apartment in Mexico City. He turns around and looks. He sees nothing. He hears nothing. No footsteps, nothing. Then he thinks, this is all a dream. There's no one outside. No one came in the apartment. Let me lay back down. And he does. But unfortunately, he hears this sound. Tossing and turning in the kitchen. And then that makes him jump up and look. And then he sees the white spirited gown in the kitchen. She's calling to someone, but he doesn't know. He realizes the voice is calling for someone maybe named Felipe. His name's not Felipe. But now he's hypnotized. The voice, like a siren, has woken him up out of his sleep. And he realizes he's in the kitchen now. And all he can do is watch this spirit throw things around in his kitchen, looking for something. He worries that it's a knife. Then he realizes the woman is wearing a wedding dress. And she's still calling out to her Felipe. Felipe was supposed to take her somewhere. He realizes it's a full moon. See, this ghostly apparition was supposed to marry her darling Felipe, but it was an arranged marriage that she wasn't in love and he wasn't in love. So he ran out on her on what was supposed to be the wedding day. And she was so distraught that she went looking for him all day, couldn't find him. All night, couldn't find him during the full moon. She came back so distraught that she did something to herself in the kitchen when she got back home. Use your imagination, people, of what happened. But that turned her into a ghost. I'm skipping the grotesque parts. And that made her this wandering ghost on this street in Mexico City every full moon night, looking for and all the locals know that if you hear that and on the moonlit light, you never open the window, you never open the door, because that brings a spirit in, which brings it to our character, who's now in the kitchen with this apparition who's staring at him, making all this noise in the kitchen. But then he realizes she's not holding a weapon, or she's not what, you imagine a ghost to do, turn you into a ghost or kill you or whatever, that she's just there in the kitchen staring at him. He's in the kitchen too. And out of his head, he grabs some food that he tried to make earlier on, and he offers it to her. And he realizes she takes it. He didn't know ghosts can eat, or ghosts could hold bowls or whatever, but she can. And she loves the smell of it. She loves what he made, which he was struggling with these old ingredients, because he's a chef. His roots are from Mexico, and he's come back home, and whatever he made that he didn't think was all that great, this spirit, this apparition, loves it, loves the smell of it, and feels at home and feels happy with him. And I don't know. Do you think the spirit would disappear? What would be a happier ending? This is probably weird to ask random people listening to this. What would be a happier ending in this spooky story? Him turning into a spirit and going with her wherever you go? Or her feeling happy and feeling like she's not searching for anything? Or him just staying in Mexico with this spirit? Maybe there's this weird thing where he can coexist as a person here and have a ghost wife. Or what? What would that happier ending be? I don't know. I like having this idea of a spooky story, but I don't know what the ending should be. Does the spirit have the happy ending in that she takes him to the spirit world? Or does he stay here? He, kind of falls in love with this apparition, and that he stays in this apartment. He ends up buying it and opening up a small food stand or a restaurant here, where he's always visited by this apparition on moonlit nights, and he cooks for her on moonlit nights after his restaurant is closed, and they have a great meal together. Maybe that's the happy ending. But yeah, that's my my first spooky story of this season. I don't know. Let me know what you think, or find me out in the world. Let me know what you think. I do have a website called dumbtestlate.com. I don't know if you go whatever, but thank you for listening. My Instagram, for some reason, I used to have a Dumb Test Late Instagram. I think it got shadow banned. I don't know how, and I appealed it, but can't contact me there. But that's my first spooky story. What did you think of it? Also, this is what the ghost was saying in English.
Felipe. He said we would run away by the dim light of the moon. Come meet me, my groom.
Yeah, that's what they were saying. That was a version in English. But yeah, that's my first spooky story. You always got to start out with a good ghost story. But hopefully that's how I end it. Like my character ends up getting over his fear of being in a different place and having the pressure from his parents to remember his roots by meeting this apparition, this ghost, this woman at night, the Moonlit Bride,
La
or
novia iluminada por la luna.
yeah, in that he feels at home. He feels somehow safer with her, or in a safe place with her, and he wants to stay. And she visits him because she's happy visiting him, and they have this good coexistence. But yeah, that's my story. But you're wondering, as advertised, this podcast is supposed to use AI. Also, so I requested AI, the Gemini one. Gemini. So I prompted Gemini to create a story from my same prompt. Create a movie idea for a horror movie set in Mexico City called The Moonlit Bride. This is what Gemini came up with for the log line. A young woman, so they switched the genders of, the main character. A young woman studying abroad in Mexico City becomes entangled in a terrifying Aztec prophecy when she falls for a charismatic local who is revealed to be centuries-old shape-shifting creature seeking a human bride under the full moon. So the way I looked at my story was it was going to be a short story that's part of, like, say, all of my spooky stories are one book or one movie, and there's just short stories. There's like bite-sized stories. That's the way I look at it. But the way Gemini did it was like a full-on movie, which that's kind of what I requested. So this is their synopsis, setting the scene. Mexico City, a vibrant metropolis pulsating with ancient history and modern energy. We focus on, I can never say this name. It's spelled Xochitl. This is how it's pronounced, if I can get.
Xochitl.
Yes, Xochitl.
Xochitl.
Okay, that's a cool name. A bright but naive American art student captivated by the city's rich culture and folklore. So that's kind of like my character. My character is in a different place. They have that, fear and anxiety of being in a different world. Okay, so back to Gemini's story. Xochitl meets and falls for Santiago, a charming and enigmatic, I cannot say that word. Enigmatic, sorry. Enigmatic, I know what that word is, but I cannot say that word. Artist who seems to embody the city's soul. Their connection is intense, but social? How do you say it again? Come on, Google, help me.
Xochitl.
Xochitl. Xochitl soon notices strange occurrences around him, heightened senses and odd behaviors under the full moon, and a mysterious aversion to sunlight. As Xochitl digs deeper into Santiago's past, she discovers a horrifying truth. He is a Nagual, Nagual. It's the first time I've seen that word. A powerful shape-shifting creature from Aztec mythology bound to a dark pact that requires him to take human bride under the full moon. The Moonlit Bride. Xochitl discovers she's the chosen bride and the latest in a long line of sacrifice to appease the ancient gods. She must find a way to break the curse and escape Santiago's clutches before the next full moon. I'm going to skip down. So horror elements. This is what Gemini came up with. Santiago's transformations are visceral and terrifying, drawing inspiration from Aztec mythology and folklore. Imagine jaguar-like features, serpentine movements, and feathered serpent imagery. That could be cool. Kind of reminds me of that vampire movie. I can't think of the name right now. I won't even try to think of it right now. But it's an older one. Oh, well. Let's see. Psychological horror. Xochitl. How do you say it again? Come on, Google.
Xochitl.
Xochitl. Descent into the unknown, her paranoia and isolation as she uncovers the truth, and her struggle to convince others of the dangers, and add a layer of psychological suspense. What else did I got? Full moon imagery. The full moon plays a crucial role, casting an eerie glow over the city and triggers Santiago's transformations. That's more like werewolf stuff. Let's see. Oh yeah, also Day of the Dead. Day of the Dead is something I wanted to also have in my story. Like my character is like, you see him visiting during Day of the Dead, or, you know, Dia de los Muertos, or whatever however it's pronounced in Spanish. Sorry, my Spanish is just terrible. But he doesn't realize, well, there's a bunch of events going on. So he's going to all these markets around that time. And he doesn't realize that the Moonlit Bride is kind of coming out then too and following him around. Somehow she's impressed on him, or seen him, or spotted him, or has some familiarity with his family or something like that. And she pops up while he's going to these markets around Mexico City, around the Day of the Dead celebrations, and she's following him. But he doesn't realize that because, you know, Day of the Dead celebrations, everybody's dressed up in these, you know, elaborate costumes. He sees her, but he thinks she's just a person that's celebrating. I wanted to add that from mine. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. Okay, so the ending of Gemini's tagline: "The Moonlit Bride offers a fresh take on the horror genre, blending Aztec mythology, Mexican folklore, and the vibrant backdrop of Mexico City to create a chilling and unforgettable cinematic experience." That's pretty good. That's a pretty good, like, standard story. I feel like it's been done before. But I mean, that's what AI has to pull from somewhere. So that's the AI story compared to my story, The Moonlit Bride. But yeah, thanks for listening. This is my first spooky season story. Hope you liked it. I'll be back soon with the next one. Like I said, I have many ideas, and I want to do at least 5. I have to match last year, so I have to do 5. This is the first one, The Moonlit Bride. I hope you liked it. Find me somewhere. Find me out in the online world. Don't find me in the real world. No, that's spooky for real. I always forget this podcast pops up on YouTube also. Leave me a comment on YouTube. Find this episode on YouTube if you want to add to it, or think my idea is terrible. If you think it's terrible, keep that to yourself. But I hope you're having a good spooky season. Hope you get into some spooky stuff. Hopefully some good spooky stuff. Don't scare yourself too much. There's enough scary stuff out there in the world. But yeah, I am still Kirk. This is still Dumb Test Late. We're full on in spooky season. Hope you're doing something good for yourself. Eating good, treating yourself good. Make yourself happy. Make other people happy. And that's where I will end it. So thanks for listening, guys. Catch you on the next spooky one soon. Bye-bye.